do have a bright future ahead of us. And it's this great place where we take all this technology, we connect it together, and we have this hyper-connectivity, kind of how my kids are after sugar. And it's really transforming us. And in the telecommunications industry, we call this 5G. I come from an incumbent telecom provider in the Netherlands, and 5G means that we take all these dumb devices, we connect them to each other, and suddenly they're smart. That's great. Great, right? Except it doesn't actually work that way. So let's take a look of how this vision actually translates for security. And we're going to go for the Oxford definition. Oxford Dictionary, people? Woo! So the Oxford Dictionary actually had the foresight to include this in their definition of cybersecurity. They said, you know, for IoT, the only thing that can prevent the Internet of Things from transforming the way we work and live, it will be a breakdown in security. And when you talk to security folks, they've adopted the Oxford definition, but we've defined it ourselves as IoT equals the Internet of shit. All right? Because here's the bottom line. You can't make dumb devices smart. And you cannot secure insecure IoT devices. And especially that OT bit, that operational technology, you will see that that is the most difficult thing to secure. I don't want to burst too many bubbles, but for example, ROS, you know, that robotics operating system, it had major information security flaws. They were only fixed in February 2017. Baxter, the robot you've been seeing, also hackable, also just fixed. Basic authentication flaws, flaws in the actual underlying protocol. That would mean that remotely you could access Baxter and have him move stuff around that you never wanted it to do, but the hacker did. There goes your automated process. So it makes sense to pay attention to cybersecurity because we do want to have the benefit of all this cool technology. And I want to tell you a personal story. I was on vacation in Seattle, and I was visiting my brother, and I actually got very jealous of his blender. So I wanted this blender, so I went, you know, to go buy this blender, which I thought was awesome because it could, like, puree everything. It's basically an airplane motor that blends. So that's good, you know, and I think it's because we have to kind of rethink our technology because, you know, when I was telling you about the dumb technology, it's because everything is computerized, everything is digital. So we have to stop thinking of it as a car. It's a computer with wheels that takes you places. We have to stop thinking about it as a blender. It's a computer that blends stuff. Okay, we're still with me? And what I like to think about is someone worked really hard to get this cool blender out there in the market, and they wanted to make it connectable so that over Wi-Fi, you could connect to the blender and let it blend. How useful is this for you? Do you want a connected blender? The clue is that in a couple of years, you won't have a choice. You can't buy a blender that's not connected. And forget time to market. As a security professional, I want to know about time to hack. How long does it take me to hack the connected blender? And we actually did this as an experiment. We put a toaster online and looked how long it took us. It took very little time to hack the connected toaster. When it comes to the connected thermostat, it's a really easy stepping stone to get onto the rest of the network. One of the biggest hacks in history with the largest data breach ever, I won't mention the company, but it happened through their heating, ventilation, and cooling systems. You went in through there, and it was a stepping stone for the rest of the network and to get to the credit card data that the hackers really were after. So it becomes very, very relevant for us to learn how to secure these things, and it means that we need to pay attention to the time to hack and not just the time to market. So the really annoying thing is when your blender and your toaster go and attack Netflix. That's just annoying. I mean, we talk about critical infrastructure, right? So all of these annoying DDoSes, the way that they work is that we have two factors that we like to distinguish. One of them is volumetric, so how big is the DDoS in terms of traffic? The other thing that we look at for a DDoS is if it's multi-vector. Does it use different types of attack surfaces to actually carry out the DDoS? And, you know, it's gotten beyond annoying, because 3 years ago, The largest DDoS I had ever seen was 300 gigabit. And it was a big attack, spam house, Cloudflare. You can Google it if you want, 300 gigabit. But in the last couple of years, so just this fall, it's gotten to 1.2 terabit. So it has quadrupled in 3 years. How many of you at work or at home have a 1.2 terabit connection? Big companies, the Akamais, the telecom infrastructures, the internet exchanges cannot cope with this level of volume of traffic. So the cost to business is unfathomable. We're talking about millions every time. The average cost of these incidents is 250 million. How many of you have that kind of risk appetite for a DDoS? Okay, so that's pretty shocking. So what we see is that the volume is increasing, it's getting easier and easier to do these attacks, but the actual cost to carry them out, so let's say you don't like your competitor, Standard Bank against, what's another South African bank, NetBank? Competitors, right? So if Standard Bank, hypothetically, wanted to get to NetBank, right? You just go get a booter service, which is also called a stressor service, to stress or test a link. And for really, like, under a couple of $100, you can knock out the competition. How long do you want to knock them out? 30 minutes? 3 days? This happens all the time. This is the cost of doing business today and being connected online. I took the liberty of taking the digital attack map, the most recent one that I could find from yesterday, and just showing it to you. And you can actually see that we test the types of DDoSes that we see online. It's happening every day, all the time. This is the new usual. Okay, toasters, blenders, Netflix, we can live with that. What happens when it comes to the security of our critical infrastructure and our defense systems? When we're talking about automated drones, when we're talking about the F-35, also known as the Joint Strike Fighter. There was an article in May that showed that the designs were hacked, that the information was copied, that it was hacked by the Chinese, etc., and that we're actually having hacking problems with the F-35. How many of you know if South Africa have actually bought an F-35? Did they roam here? I can tell you we bought them in the Netherlands, and this should be a worry about the actual validity and the integrity of such a platform. This is a picture of the F-35 actually going over Rotterdam in the Netherlands. I don't want it to be hacked. I don't want there to be a remote code execution bug on this thing while it's flying over a city. And there are laws. You might think, why isn't there a sort of Geneva Convention for cyber war? There kind of, sort of is. So they developed this thing called the Talon Manual. It's together with NATO in Talon, Estonia. But this is not a part of the current international law. It's like a sort of unofficial document still. This is how we should conduct ourselves. We still should not be hacking critical infrastructure or hospitals. You still shouldn't be able to attack from a neutral country. But we've seen this happen. This does happen now. When you saw the earlier attacks this year, one of the heaviest hit sectors were hospitals. So we have real issues here, and the reason we have these issues is because we've screwed up our national priorities on a global scale. We've screwed them up completely, beyond all recognition. And what we've done is we've prioritized, in cyber war, the activity of signals intelligence, or listening to all your traffic. We've prioritized that above keeping our shit secure, right? So it's more important for me to attack stuff than to keep it secure. That's what we've said, and that's how we've prioritized. So what you're going to see is that World War III, which is happening now, but in the background, is covert. It's not announced. There's no national declaration of war. It's just going to happen. It's covert. It's all digital, and it's highly asymmetric. And what I mean by asymmetric is you have an asymmetric capability. So you have highly technologically capable big army countries who are being completely flabbergasted by a tiny little hacking army from another unknown place. Yeah, fully asymmetric warfare. So the opponent has to get creative. And that's what we're looking at in World War III. And when it comes to this, it's all about vulnerabilities and incidents, about reducing the opportunity window for the opponent to get in. And that's where we should be looking at. And we should be continuously improving our information assurance capability, keeping our cities and our national infrastructure safe, and prioritizing that above SIGINT. But, you know, we're not there. And the age of innocence that we had in the telecom sector kind of left in 2014. How many of you have ever heard of the Belgacom hack? I'm pronouncing it in the Dutch way. There's one person. So here's what happened. Belgacom is a Belgian incumbent operator. KPN is the Dutch, or the Netherlands incumbent operator. And what you actually saw is that Belgacom was hacked by the NSA working together with the GCHQ in order for them to get to a target customer that Belgacom had in the Middle East. I couldn't make this stuff up. I need to, Tom Clancy's got nothing on this. So, and the way that they did it, it took them about 2 years to build this code framework. It's called Regin. And Regin is a beautifully architected piece of malware that basically had a 7-step model to hack and exploit this network. And what the second part of the module did was erase the first part. So you never knew how it got in. There was no smoking gun to be found like, aha, it went in this way. We think we know how it got in, but we're not 100% sure because of the way that this malware payload works. And you all might think like, oh, yeah, no, whatever. It's not really about me. It's not about small, medium enterprises or private individuals. I've got nothing to hide. This is all about big governments, big companies. Actually, it's not. When you look at confirmed infections by sector, when you look at confirmed infections in terms of category, the hardest hit were small, medium enterprises and private individuals. You guys. Not just large companies and not just large universities. Also, they were also a part of it. So the clue here is it affects us all. It's not relegated to a few people or a small niche part of the population. We all need to worry about this stuff. We all have this state-sponsored malware at our doorstep. We just don't necessarily know about it. You might also think like, okay, gosh, what chance do I have? And why is it so bad? Well, part of the reason is because of these strategic partnerships that come out from these intelligence agencies. By the way, this is not a covert document. This actually it is, but Edward Snowden brought it out. I didn't. But so the NSA has strategic partnerships with all of these companies, with telecom providers, with chip manufacturers, with hardware and software vendors. And they've got this ability to go through the stack and attack all over it. In information security, we have something called the Cia Triad, not the Central Intelligence Agency, but confidentiality, integrity, and availability being the 3 pillars of information security that you want to protect. We want to protect confidentiality, we want to protect integrity of communications, and we want to make sure that those networks and services are available. What you see when you have this type of capability is you can blow a bomb right through it. I said the word bomb. Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm having fun with my talk. So you see that, we really have issues when you're trying to combat this level of collusion and cooperation. But it's not like the companies wanted to do this. A large part of the times, they didn't even know that it was happening on their infrastructure, on their backbone, because it could have been targeted and violated without them leading it. Also, for some of the companies, it was a requirement that they had to work together with the agencies in order to retain their license to operate. So you can't do business, and you can't talk about the stuff that you've been asked by these agencies under threat of, legal action. I think this is a very different world, and I don't think that there's like a general great amount of the population that's been informed. Have you been informed? Were you shocked after the Snowden revelations? I'm looking around at the faces. Shocked? Yes? No, not really. How many of you changed your behavior after the Snowden revelations? And this is my point. You know, do we really care? The clue is this. There is a market for the types of things that was revealed in the Snowden documents. There's an actual black market, which we're trying to legitimize and make a white market. When you saw the FBI iPhone case, yeah, and they finally managed to hack the iPhone by getting it from a white market supplier from Israel. There was an actual way to get into the phone. They used it, they bought it. But there's also like a much better equipped hacking black market that we're trying to legitimize in order to have the same type of access. And I call it the Three Musketeers principle. We're doing all of this work to create 0 days, which are vulnerabilities that are known for like no time, that have really big impact. They go from the cyber or digital world onto our physical world very often, and have real physical impact. And we're doing it for one target. And that one target is compromising us all. It's also the trickle-down nature of vulnerabilities in general. Once we have these 0 days or these vulnerabilities that are not known to anyone and not even to the vendor, and we're rushing and scrambling to fix them, it means that they first get used by the really sophisticated state actors. Then they trickle down to the cyber criminals. Then they trickle down to the individual attackers or the cyber activists. And then finally, they're used by Joey, that kid down the street that has that acne problem. You know, and this is the real nature. And these kids don't necessarily need to even know what they're doing, but they're very effective carrying out the attack. And that's the real problem that we as a society need to defend against. And what's really interesting about this is that that market turns into like an entire, you know, community, an ecosystem of parties that you can actually hire to do this for you. And what you see is we have mercenaries now. We have digital mercenaries who are hacking for a living. So let's just talk about them. One of them is called Hacking Team. And what's really interesting about Hacking Team as well as the Equation Group is they didn't have their own security in order. So here they are making these beautifully crafted, serious attacks, but they didn't have their own security in order, so they got hacked. The Equation Group is the same story. The NSA outsourced, because, you know, we all outsource, but the NSA outsourced some of that hacking capability to a group that's called the Shadow Brokers. Oh, sorry, the Equation Group. The Equation Group then got hacked by the Shadow Brokers. So what did the Shadow Brokers do? They went in, they got all of this treasure trove of these 0 days, and then they said, ha ha, we're going to put it on an online auction. And then they advertised on Twitter. They said, whoever wants this treasure trove of state-sponsored attack arsenal, its starting price is $10 million. Anybody pay? Just out of curiosity. You can tell me. Come tell me later. And what was really funny is, after they actually paid, they started releasing it. Does anybody know what the thing was that they released? WannaCry. WannaCry came from the NSA trying to create 0 days on the most common platform, Windows. So we had an attack that was made for the NSA by the Equation Group, which was then stolen by the Shadow Brokers and then released online. And I saw that South Africa was hit by WannaCry. You know, but there's no real reason that it had to be hit, because we had been following this case all along, and we had seen that, you know, Windows had come out with a solution. We knew which servers were vulnerable. We patched them in time. We reverse engineered the attack. We put the stuff online. We were good to go. We didn't have a single instance of WannaCry on our network. But that's not true for hospitals, for other telecom operators, for a whole bunch of critical infrastructure. And we don't really know who the heck the Shadow Brokers are, or which country they came from. Are they from Russia, North Korea, Putin? We don't know. So, and the reason that we don't know is because when we actually look, there's quite a bit of possibilities to hide their tracks, and because there's something that's called a false flag. They basically plant disinformation in the cookie trail of crumbs that you're following, and that disinformation, like for example in Regin, splintered through that code was the word Starbucks. So does that make you think NSA, or does that make you think false flag? When you take a look at the Sony hack, one of the reasons that they thought it was the North Koreans that actually did the attack against Sony was because of the working times that were noted during the attack. So there's a lot of different ways to hide who really is there. And you might think, okay, well, I don't have this problem because one of the things I believe in is cryptography, and I'm going to just encrypt everything. But understand that good cryptography has an underlying basis. You need secure hardware, secured operating systems, your protocols need to be top-notch, your applications need to be in order, and you need to have a solid understanding of what you are trying to protect from whom. It's a fundamental basis of everything. And how many people are comfortable that their companies, the other institutions for which they work and hold their data, have that in order? The majority of them don't. So as a result, the crypto tends to be insufficient, especially now when there's a global race to build a quantum computer. And a quantum computer, as you know, is going to have the ability to break all of the current cryptography that we use. So banks, institutions that are holding any type of personal identifiable information, gone. The cryptographic mechanisms that we use when we use public key cryptography will no longer be valid when we have a quantum computer. And this threat of surveillance is not limited to state actors, but it is for everybody. And we all have some data that we've encrypted in some form. If you've ever used a VPN, you're using cryptography. And what we see is that there's a global trend in terms of national legislation to try to just capture all this traffic, encrypted or unencrypted. And we're moving towards that everywhere. We know this now. But I need to tell you that the Chinese have launched their first satellite to protect against a quantum computer. They also are building a 2,000-kilometer-long network in China, connecting from Beijing all the way down to Shanghai, a fully quantum encrypted network that will be impervious to attack by a quantum computer. Do you have that yet in South Africa? You have to ask yourself, what do they know that the rest of us don't know? Because nobody else in the world has this yet. Not to this scale, not to this extent. The rationale for which they have it is to protect themselves in the event of a regional war. And here's the deal, right? I told you that we're collecting all this information. And collecting all this information means that we're capturing all the traffic. This is a photo of the NSA Utah facility. I think that the reason we capture everything is we know we're not there yet with a quantum computer. But you might as well capture even the encrypted traffic now and just wait till you get one so you can decrypt this encrypted traffic, because old secrets are just as good as new secrets. And the predictive nature of old secrets means that you can use them towards your advantage later. This is really cool stuff. Bottom line, take the quote from Etsy. Without doing something about this problem, without having quantum-safe encryption, everything that you are transmitting now or have ever transmitted will be susceptible to eavesdropping, misuse, and disclosure. How are we going to deal with this? Because I'm not just going to leave you with the gloom and doom. I've got a plan. It's not an easy plan, but it's a plan. And we're slowly going to get there. So if you use crypto now, what we're going to do is we're going to make it really hard for them. Because for a good quantum computer to be able to do this kind of attack, it's got to have a lot of these things called qubits. And until they have enough qubits to be viable to break the crypto, it's going to take a while. So you might as well take the current crypto you use now and just make it really long keys. So, in cryptography, we have this thing called key length. Size matters. So here, we're going to use the biggest keys we can. Big is better. And then we're going to take a look for places where we're going to do that thing what the Chinese did, and we're going to set up quantum key distribution. It's not good enough to do it internet scale yet, because we don't have an internet scale quantum key distribution network like they're kind of building in China, but there might be a couple of places, like between standard banks, primary and secondary data centers, where they do all their transactional reconciliation. Just saying. And, you might want to investigate an opportunity there to do this. And the third and most future-forward solution, where the National Institute of Standards and Technology has put out a call for a new set of algorithms, is to look at a new set of algorithms that will be viable even when we have a quantum computer. To replace the set of current encryption algorithms we have now, we can have post-quantum algorithms. That's what we need to do. And I'm just going to call out the elephant in the room. I mean, I know that I've seen a lot of slides with elephants so far, so I'm just going to say it verbally. Hardware and software vendors need to be liable for their products. For years, we've been hearing that it's our problem, the user. The user needs to update their stuff. The user needs to get everything okay. But it's not just the user. I get so grumpy with this because the user's just buying all this stuff. The vendors are still building all the crap. Like in the EU, we have something called the Network and Information Security Directive. And it's supposed to be the collective set of agreements we have on network and information security, just like the GDPR, to improve, security. Okay. And the clue is they've made it mandatory for different sectors. So telecom, healthcare, transport, banking. Everybody has to comply to the Network and Information Security Directive. There's one group that is exempt. Guess who they are? Hardware and software vendors. They're exempt from the Network and Information Security Directive. Can anyone say, like, lunch in Brussels? I mean, it's so unfair, it's ridiculous. So we need to get our house in order, but we need to make sure that our legislative framework and our liability stuff makes sense to sort this stuff out. And we need to stop getting the user to take all the mea culpa for figuring out what we should do here. And I'm not saying we don't have to do anything. We do need to do some stuff. We need to update our stuff. Okay, if there's a button, go click it. Download all the stuff from the app stores. All right, update everything. Upgrade where possible. Stop using that platform for XP that you still use for your, banking stuff. And, okay, back up everything online and offline. Use passphrases instead of weak passwords. Two-factor authentication, VPN, blah, 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 blah. We know all this stuff, okay? And the most important thing I can tell you is you should know when you shouldn't click. We should all have a lesson. Know when not to click, all right? We can do that. The clue is we've got to do it together. It can't just be one group. Can't just be one country. My parents used to work for the UN. At home, we used to talk about the digital divide. Quantum will be the next digital divide. It will be of such strategic importance. It will be so expensive to initially fund that research and development that Africa will be left out. If you don't follow suit, get informed, and get started with making sure you're ready for when that thing hits. It can bring a lot of good. I mean, there's a lot of cool things you can do. You still need to be prepared for any negative fallout. And I love Benjamin Franklin. I mean, not just because of the Declaration of Independence and all that, but also for this quote, because we really need to do it together, otherwise we're all going to hang separately. And we really need to learn to move from thinking only about cyber war to think about how we deal with a sustainable future for cyber peace. We should make the security problems we have with our new technologies obsolete by building it in instead of bolting it on. Thank you.